This is one of those conversations that nobody really wants to have. I certainly don't want to have this. We shouldn't be having this conversation, but yet we are. And if we don't continue to have this conversation, conversation will cease. We act like we're not connected to one another. We live our lives as if we're not immersed in this ecosphere, that what we do doesn't really matter. The problem is too tough. The climate is going to change, and we'll just adapt with it. Is that true? Can we truly adapt? Can we adapt fast enough? These are the questions that we need to start really asking ourselves and sort of being with. And I don't mean being with as a burden, but being with as an opportunity to come to know ourselves and what life is all about. Not just for humans, but all of life. And we forget that we are, yes, all of life, but life is much bigger than us. Much, much bigger than us. So, a sustainable future? What a sustainable future really means is it possible? Is it possible that what we develop and what we consume and what we do right now, do we do it in such a way that it will not affect future generations, that it will not impede their enjoyment of nature? So basically is, how are we acting today? And can we leave the earth not only better, but at least as good as what we found it? So if we ask ourselves, how are we doing? You already know the answer. We're failing horribly. Horribly. We have spent our children's inheritance and we're going out and partying every night, and it looks like we don't give a damn. I'm not saying that for everyone, because there are those amazing individuals like a Greta Thunberg who with conviction of her heart stood up and said, we can't do this anymore. We just can't take it. The last 8 years have been the hottest years on record. You've seen Al Gore's Inconvenient Truth, the movie, 2006. What if we had stopped something, put on the brakes then? I mean, seriously put on the brakes then. But that was a beginning, a beautiful beginning. That was the beginning of waking us up to the inconvenient truth is that we are fungus on this planet. And we're outgrowing our petri dish. If we go back to 1980, the Ronald Reagan, the beginning of that time, the population of the planet was 4 billion. And the population now is double that, 8. We're going to pass 8 billion this year. So, if we had stopped at 4 billion, what we know about the planet's ability to sequester carbon, to take the carbon out of the atmosphere, recondition it through the trees, through the ocean, through the rocks, that we can filter it out, we were at a sustainable rate at 1980. We flew past that little stop sign. We flew past that mile marker with our foot to the pedal. And we can thank our tendency within humans to want more. What Buddhism calls that desire. The desire. The desire. And it can be seen most eloquently in corporations, where the mantra, where the God on the altar is greater consumption, greater growth, greater profits, to the sky, and there is no limit. Well, with that as the culture, and with capitalism and this as a culture, we are doomed as a species. There's no other polite way of saying it. If we are to change, we're going to have to rock the whole foundation of consumption, throwaway, disposability, and endless growth. And that points us back to, what are we going to do? Is electric cars going to do it? Is stopping eating meat, is that enough? It's not. There are, frankly, too many people on the planet, and that's the real scary thing. Let's say you're on a space shuttle, and there's 5 people in your space shuttle, and you're out in space. And the filtration system within the space shuttle works perfectly for 5 people. And you guys are doing great. Breathing, everything is wonderful. And 5 more people show up. I don't know how they got there, but they're there. And now what happens to that atmosphere within the space shuttle? It cannot sustain 10 people. It can sustain 5. And so what happens? Slowly, the air degrades until the point where the system breaks down, and it's gotten so far out of balance that virtually everyone within the space shuttle dies. We're all interconnected. We are in outer space on a space shuttle. The same situation applies. If we continue adding more people to the planet who produce a carbon footprint, nothing is going to save us, not technology, anything else. And we can see it in the animal kingdoms, or we can see it in the bacteria kingdoms. Whenever they outgrow their food supply, there's massive die-offs. And usually some survive and start to repopulate again. And this cycle repeats. Because apparently the animals do not know how to stop procreating. And so they continue to have babies until they run out of a food supply or oxygen or whatever they need to survive. Are we smarter than the animals? No. There's your answer. We're not smarter than the animals. We're doing the same thing, and we justify it. And I hate having this conversation. But it's one that we need to have again and again. And it's like taking off the rose-colored glasses that we've been looking through since the 1980s. We've heard about this. We know about this. But where's the conviction? And where's the fire in the belly? What we have is corporations, it's kind of Darwinian, survival of the fittest, and that works great in the corporate model. You attack your enemy, you crush your enemy, you absorb your enemy, and then you become stronger. And that has worked up to a point. But for the evolution of humans to continue, that model has got to stop today. We're looking at a whole new paradigm, and that paradigm would be not the survival of the fittest, but the survival of the most cooperative, the survival of the nurturer, survival of the collaborator. Those are the people that can bring us together, stop the division, and have us work as a team to address the greatest situation, the most dire situation this sapiens have ever seen. So, not only the first thing to do, but is to take a look at our systems of governance, our systems of consumption, basically our capitalist system. Is there a better way? Is there a more cooperative way? Could there be better wealth distribution? Yes. Could it be more beneficial to the planet? Of course, yes. Do we need to consume the oil that we're consuming? No. We can make these changes, but do we have the collective will? Well, that's fine for you guys. You get your electric cars, but I like my whatever I'm driving. For me, I had that conversation with myself back in the 90s when I had a chance to buy a new car. Did I buy a 6-cylinder or did I buy a 4-cylinder? The 4-cylinder gets better mileage. The 6-cylinder uses more. It gets me the same place. Well, I wanted to race the car, so I wanted the 6-cylinder. And I looked back and I noticed that I had the conversation and I noticed how I justified it. Well, it won't matter. You know, it's not that bad. That was in 1993. We didn't have the consciousness. We didn't have the awareness that we do today. I drive an electric car. I plug it in. I've been driving it for 3 years. I love it. Our other car is a hybrid. We made these choices long ago consciously to do our part. Is that enough? No. We're not going to have any more children. But one thing we can do is take a look at the idea of celebrating larger families. Can we celebrate a couple that chooses not to have children? Can we celebrate and uplift their choices? Can we celebrate a family that has one child? This is where we're headed. And without this, we have the divisiveness of religion and society and culture. The Vatican will tell you, don't use birth control. Why? What kind of nonsense is that, given the circumstances? The Bible says, go forth and multiply. You have dominion over the planet. Well, we know that that's a very outmoded idea, a mythology that belongs to the Stone Age, the Dark Ages. It's not appropriate in today with what we know today. The Pope could say, God blesses those that use birth control. God blesses a family without children. God uplifts those that steward the earth by not overpopulating it. Go forth. If you need an abortion, that's okay with God. If you need contraception, that's okay with God. That could happen tomorrow. These are the possibilities I'm holding out for. In Muslim religions, Allah is the one that gives you the children. Well, maybe we can talk to Allah and say, hey, let's space those children out a few more, and let's have fewer children. These are the possibilities and conversations we could have. So it gets down to how much do we care? What's that fire in the belly? What's the conviction of the heart? Do any of these words ring true to you? Enough to where you're willing to invite others into this uncomfortable, inconvenient conversation. The problem isn't the fossil fuels. The problem isn't any of those. The problem is overpopulation. The result of that is the climate catastrophe. That connection needs to be made. Right now it's not being talked about. We talk about the solutions. These are not even band-aids on open wounds that are gushing. Unless there is a change, we have no idea. And just go back and rewatch The Inconvenient Truth. And you can see how dire that warning was and how it's starting now. We are at the beginning of the cascade event. So I've been donating to Planned Parenthood significantly for 50 years. This is a conviction in my heart that we have to have choice. We have to be able to regulate our procreation. We have to be smarter than the animals because we know now. Before we didn't. So do we have a sustainable future? From where I'm standing in this moment, looking forward with what we're doing today, no, it is not sustainable. We are doomed. Yet, I am hopeful. And the reason why I have a little bit of hope is it's kind of like the alcoholic that hits bottom and starts to say, you know, this is really screwed up. When there's dead fish in Lake Merritt, when the estuary has got a toxic bloom and things are dying, when we have massive heat waves, when the ice caps are melting and the sea rise is coming at least 20 feet. When do we act? When does the frog say, enough is enough, I'm jumping out of the pot. This is too damn hot. But usually the frog says, well, it's not hot enough yet. I'm okay. I'm comfortable here. Until it's too late. So how do we move forward without being paralyzed? See, if we were to really let in the suffering of the world as we know it today, with the amount of heat that's going on today, with the amount of wars, with the amount of everything, fighting for survival in so many countries, famine. And if we were to let in that suffering, it's devastating. It's paralyzing for me just to let this in. I tried it the other night. And then I thought about the displacement of hundreds of millions of people moved from land that could no longer be farmed, that land was underwater, that was gone. Where do you move now to survive? And the suffering that will cause by now trying to adapt to the fewer and fewer resources, our water resources, our food resources, as our whole system starts to collapse. Nobody wants to hear about that. Nobody. But unless we do something, this becomes the reality. So, what is it that you want? Ask yourself that. What is it that I really want moving forward? What's a vision that I can hold in my heart? And just let that settle. What is it that I want? And what am I a stand for? Where could I take my stand? And it could be as simple as asking, like I did yesterday, the restaurant person to turn off the fire pit because it's wasting resources. It's heating up. And she said, yeah. And she did. Simple things. Where do you take a stand when you see it? Do you speak? You make a difference. A single person like a Greta makes a huge difference. And if you don't think you make a difference, ask anybody who spent the night with a mosquito in their room. Can we start being that little buzz? Can we start buzzing around those that can make a greater difference? Our politicians, our rule makers. Gavin Newsom's doing a pretty good job. He could do a whole lot better, but he's breaking new territory by outlawing cars by 2035. Gasoline cars, that is. Well, if you don't feel beat up, you should. This is a tough one. This is a real tough one, and I respect you listening to this and at least considering what I'm saying. The future, our grandchildren's future, depends upon what we do today. And so I'm going to leave you with what our president, Biden, said just recently. I'm going to sort of squeeze it very small together. He said, you need to vote to literally save democracy once again. The very survival of our planet is on the ballot. And you know what he means by that. The very survival of our planet is on the ballot. It's like who we elect moving forward will make the difference. We'll either deny this inconvenient truth or we'll support some kind of meaningful action to make a difference before it's too late. So on that happy note, let's go into prayer. As we simply take a breath. And we rest from the beating that's just happened. And we sink into the sanctuary of our hearts. And we let the message of today simply settle there quietly, peacefully. You have heard the message. Allow it to settle and to grow. We now bring love into the picture and let love answer the question, what is mine to do? And knowing how powerful we truly are. We know the path forward. The path will appear to us throughout the conviction of our heart, and we will take each step as it arises. The future belongs to those who can cooperate, who can nurture, and who can collaborate. And I leave us with we speak to others with the authority and conviction that the fate of humanity depends upon the actions that we do today. So we move forward in peace, in equanimity, and so it is.